The American scrap metal became a Soviet treasure. The aircraft that the Allies shunned like a venomous snake was transformed into a weapon of victory in the Soviet Union. Why did a machine considered almost a death trap for inexperienced pilots become the darling of our aces? What lay behind the strange design, with the engine behind the pilot and car-like doors? Why were Americans afraid to take its controls, while Pokryshkin and his comrades made it the terror of the Luftwaffe? This story is full of contradictions, unexpected turns, and facts that people preferred to keep silent about. Some called it a killer plane, others the savior of the sky. But the most surprising thing is how this very snake chose its master. Watch until the end, and you'll understand why the Airacobra became a symbol that in combat, it's not only technology that matters, but also the hands that hold the stick. Hundreds of planes converged over the Kuban. The sky turned into a ball of fire and smoke, where every second decided the fate of dozens of lives. It was here that the unusual American fighter, which arrived in the Soviet Union under Lend-Lease, first appeared. Its recognizable silhouette quickly became part of the aerial battle. And this was the Bell P-39 Airacobra, a machine that would hold a special place in aviation history. At the time, the Allies regarded this machine coolly. Among American and British pilots, there were talks that the Airacobra had too complex a character. It was like a temperamental horse that couldn't tolerate a weak rider. Many things caused apprehension: the unusual layout, unpredictable behavior at high altitudes, and a severe punishment for the slightest mistake. Overseas, these were considered flaws, and an opinion took hold among pilots: there are more reliable machines. Yet, this story has a second side. The Soviet aces who received the Airacobra and took it to the sky seemed to see something in it that the Americans missed. For them, it wasn't a temperamental fighter, but a new opportunity, a weapon capable of fundamentally changing the course of a battle. Our pilots, veterans of Spain and Khalkhin Gol, accustomed to difficult situations, sensed a hidden potential in the machine. They fought where it performed best, at low and medium altitudes. Thus, a paradox was born. The same aircraft seemed like a problem in the West, but in the hands of Soviet pilots, it turned into a true hunter of the enemy. This was a rare case where the equipment seemed to choose its master, and only those who knew how to handle it unlocked its true strength. The Airacobra's story didn't start like most other World War II fighters. Usually, designers first created the plane and then selected the armament for it. In the case of the Bell P-39, the opposite happened. The project's basis was a cannon, not just any cannon, but the heavy 37mm Oldsmobile T9, which was later indexed as the M4. It was so powerful that it could destroy targets with just a few shots. And American engineers wondered, why limit themselves to conventional machine guns if they could build an entire plane around a single weapon? This is how the concept of the unusual fighter arose. The cannon was placed right in the nose, firing through the propeller hub, so the pilot could shoot precisely along the line of flight, not with a correction like on planes with wing-mounted armament. This decision was revolutionary. Now, just one successful hit was enough to disable even a large bomber, but at the same time, this imposed a lot of technical constraints. To free up space in the front of the fuselage, the designers decided to move the engine behind the pilot's cabin, a risky and unconventional solution. This approach changed everything. The aircraft acquired an unusual balance, a new center of gravity, and a completely different handling character. Where traditional fighters were predictable and familiar, the Airacobra demanded a special feel for the machine from the pilot. It became a tool that either completely submitted to the hands of an experienced aviator or punished the slightest mistake without mercy. For the sake of the cannon, other compromises had to be made. The ammunition load was limited. Only a few dozen shells, but each one weighed more than an entire burst from machine guns. In skilled hands, this detail transformed the fighter into a flying artillery platform. In the developer's vision, this was supposed to solve the problem. One aircraft could replace several by delivering pinpoint strikes on strategic enemy targets. But this idea contradicted the conventional American school of aerial combat, which focused on speed, altitude gain, and maneuverability at high altitudes. The Airacobra was born with a different character, closer to the role of a hunter of large prey than a classic aerial gladiator. This determined its future fate. The machine was misunderstood in one country and incredibly demanded in another. The Airacobra had too many peculiarities to be called an ordinary fighter. The first thing that caught the eye of engineers and pilots was the engine's placement. It was not in the nose, like on most planes of the time, but behind the cockpit, closer to the center of the fuselage. Such a solution seemed risky and unfamiliar, but it was what allowed the front to be cleared for the cannon and improved stability when firing. The center of gravity shifted, and the machine acquired a special character, combining excellent maneuverability with a tendency toward sharp handling quirks. This layout gave another advantage: superb visibility from the cockpit. The plane's nose was compact and low, meaning the pilot saw more space ahead than in most fighters of the time. In aerial combat, this was a tremendous advantage. The enemy could be spotted a little earlier, allowing the pilot to attack first and choose an advantageous position. The way the pilot entered the cockpit was also unusual. In other planes, the canopy opened upward or slid to the side, but in the Airacobra, it looked almost automotive. Doors opened like in a passenger car. For a military machine, this seemed like an eccentric decision, but in practice, it proved convenient. The pilot could quickly take his seat or evacuate the aircraft. The landing gear also deserved special attention. Most World War II fighters had a tail wheel, which made takeoff and landing a difficult matter requiring great care. The Airacobra received a tricycle landing gear with a nose wheel, which made it more stable on the ground. Because of this, the plane took off confidently even from less prepared field airfields, where the runway was short and uneven. All of this combined made the P-39 a completely special machine. It was different not only externally, but also in feel. A pilot getting into an Airacobra was stepping into another world of aviation, where familiar rules changed and every movement required a new approach and experience. These unexpected solutions would later play a key role in how the plane's fate unfolded on different fronts of the war. At first glance, the Airacobra might have seemed docile and reliable. A comfortable cockpit, good maneuverability, excellent stability on the ground. But beneath all this lay a fierce temper that did not forgive everyone. The central engine placement, which gave the machine its unique layout, turned into a source of unexpected problems in combat. If the pilot made a sudden or incorrect move, the plane easily entered a flat spin, a condition from which it was virtually impossible to recover. For inexperienced pilots, this turned into a real nightmare. The machine could enter an uncontrolled spin and wouldn't respond until it hit the ground. This nature made the Airacobra an aircraft for the strong and confident. It demanded not just technique, but true intuition from the pilot. Any mistake in control or delayed action led to the plane behaving unpredictably. The moment the ammunition ran out became especially dangerous. The shells and cartridges were located in the nose, and after they were expended, the center of gravity shifted backward, making the machine even more temperamental. At this moment, it could catch the pilot off guard and enter a flat spin. For those without serious combat experience, the Airacobra seemed like a cunning partner, beautiful, strong, but unpredictable. It couldn't be mastered in a few flights like other planes. It forced the pilot to learn to feel every movement, to work the controls gently and cautiously, without sharp maneuvers. Therefore, among American pilots, especially novices, the Airacobra gained a reputation as a plane that was dangerous to trust. It didn't forgive weakness or indecision, but this was its hidden meaning. In the hands of a master, it turned into an elegant and deadly weapon, whereas in inexperienced hands, it could become a threat to the pilot himself. For American pilots, the Airacobra quickly acquired a reputation as a dangerous machine. Theoretically, it looked promising: powerful armament, unusual layout, good maneuverability. But in practice, it turned out that it required a different approach, and most young USAAF pilots simply lacked that experience. Many of them first entered combat during World War II, and there, every flight became a test not only of technology, but also of character. A machine demanding subtle mastery proved too unpredictable for them. Additionally, the American School of Aerial Combat was geared towards something else. The US focused on battles at high altitudes, where the fighter could attack enemy bombers from above, using the speed advantage of a dive. In these conditions, the Airacobra quickly lost its strong points. Its Allison engine, without a turbo supercharger, did not allow it to feel confident at high altitudes. Where speed and power at altitude were required, it lagged behind other machines like the Mustangs or Thunderbolts. Pilots accustomed to classic combat schemes felt insecure in the Airacobra. For them, it was too unusual, and its insidious features, like the tendency for a flat spin, only intensified their apprehension. As a result, the American attitude toward the plane became cool. They preferred more predictable and safer machines. Thus, the image of the snake, beautiful but dangerous, took hold. For Americans, the Airacobra remained an aircraft best avoided. It frightened them with its character and didn't fit into the high-altitude combat strategy. But these very qualities that put off the Allies would later make it the perfect find for Soviet aces. Accustomed to fighting where skill in handling the machine in the most complex and tight maneuvers rather than altitude was decisive. In the Soviet Union, the Airacobra seemed to gain a second life. Here, they didn't try to force it into the framework of foreign tactics or demand from it what it wasn't designed for. Our aces quickly understood that the machine's strength was revealed not in the stratosphere, but where the outcome of the battle was decided in real time, at low and medium altitudes. This is where the bulk of aerial battles over the front took place, where Luftwaffe bombers and attack aircraft were covered by fighters. Soviet pilots already had rich combat experience long before the Great Patriotic War. Spain, Khalkhin Gol, the Finnish campaign, all became a school that formed a generation of pilots who knew not only how to fly, but also how to survive in the most difficult conditions. They knew that a battle rarely turned into ideal textbook schemes, and that real victory required flexibility and instant reaction. With such a background, the Airacobra in their hands ceased to be temperamental and showed a completely different face. At low altitudes, its maneuverability and powerful cannon turned the plane into a dangerous hunter. The enemy, accustomed to relying on an advantage in speed and climb rate, encountered a machine that acted differently. Soviet aces exploited its strengths to the limit: sharp turns, accurate bursts, and sudden head-on attacks. Tactics familiar to the Germans stopped working, causing them confusion. It's also important that our pilots approached the plane without fear. They understood its character, took its quirks into account, and flew in a way that prevented them from becoming a problem. The Airacobra in their hands did not seem insidious. On the contrary, it became obedient and reliable, provided it was handled correctly. And therein lay the main difference. Where Americans saw a threat, Soviet aces found an opportunity. Thus, it turned out that in the Soviet Union, the Airacobra became not just a Lend-Lease aircraft, but a true symbol of a successful union of technology and human experience. The machine, rejected overseas, became a formidable weapon in our sky, inspiring fear in the enemy and respect in the Allies. The Airacobra's main weapon was its 37mm cannon, hidden in the nose and firing straight through the propeller hub. This was not just an addition to the machine guns, but a true fang that turned the plane into a formidable flying artillery installation. To destroy a German bomber, such as the Ju-88 or He-111, 2 or 3 hits were often enough. The shells pierced the fuselage, destroyed the frame, or set fuel tanks on fire. Even one successful shot could decide the outcome of the skirmish, turning the enemy's multi-place aircraft into a burning wreck. Soviet aces quickly appreciated this advantage. Where German machines could withstand long bursts from 7.62mm or 12.7mm machine guns, the Airacobra acted economically and precisely. A skilled pilot waited for the moment, closed in, delivered a short burst, and the result was instantaneous. This style of fighting required composure and nerves of steel, but that is exactly what Soviet pilots were famous for. Interestingly, in some cases, technicians deliberately lightened the plane. The Airacobra was originally equipped with additional machine guns, but they were often removed at the front. The ammunition took up space, weighed down the nose, and reduced maneuverability. And when there is a cannon capable of deciding the fate of an enemy with one shot, the extra weight truly seemed unnecessary. By removing the machine guns, Soviet aviation masters made the machine lighter and more agile, increasing its chances in close combat. Thus, the Airacobra became a hunter that struck not by quantity, but by quality. It didn't pepper the enemy with a hail of fire, but delivered a precise and deadly blow. For German pilots, encountering this machine became a real nightmare. A short skirmish, a flash from the cannon, and all the armor proved useless. In the hands of Soviet aces, this feature became a decisive advantage, turning every sortie into a game of anticipation, where one precise attack was enough to tip the scales in their favor. The Airacobra impressed not only with its firepower, but also with its ability to withstand incredible damage. Soviet pilots often recounted stories of machines riddled with enemy bullets and shells still managing to limp back to the airfield. Sometimes the wings were literally full of holes. The skin resembled a sieve, and the fuselage bore gaping, ragged holes. But the engine kept working, and the plane responded to the controls. This gave them a chance to return home even after the toughest battles, thus saving the lives of the pilots, for whom every landing was a new victory. In the conditions of the Eastern Front, the relative simplicity of maintaining the Airacobra was also important. It didn't require perfectly equipped airfields and could be based on field sites. The tricycle landing gear made takeoff and landing safer even on uneven strips, where many other fighters risked crashing before the battle even began. Soviet mechanics quickly mastered the machine and learned to keep it operational with minimal resources. Pilots were especially grateful for the cockpit. In many Soviet fighters, the engine was located right in front of the pilot, and in summer, the cockpit temperature could rise above 440 degrees Celsius, sometimes reaching an exhausting plus 50 degrees C. In the Airacobra, the engine was moved back, creating much more comfortable conditions. Long sorties ceased to be torture. The pilot could focus on the fight, not on struggling with heat and overheating. These qualities made the plane truly valuable in Soviet conditions. It combined power and firepower with survivability and practicality, turning it into a reliable ally on the front. For the pilots, it became not just a machine, but a loyal partner with whom they could go through dozens of battles and return alive to where their comrades awaited them. One of the unexpected gifts that the Airacobra brought to the Soviet front was its radio communication. Americans traditionally paid great attention to this aspect, and therefore, the P-39 was equipped with a high-quality radio station that significantly surpassed many Soviet models in reliability and range. For our pilots, this was a revelation. Finally, they could communicate in the air clearly and distinctly, even during intense combat, without interruptions and noise. This feature changed the very tactics of aerial battles. Instead of relying solely on prearranged signals, turns, and conventions, Soviet aces began to act flexibly and cohesively. In battle, a comrade could be instantly warned of an attack, given a command to change formation, or informed about the appearance of new enemies. This turned individual aircraft into a single mechanism where each pilot was part of the overall plan. In practice, it looked like this. A pair of fighters could lure the enemy, and a flight could finish the attack, all while maintaining communication. Mistakes were reduced, surprise increased, and confidence in every maneuver became higher. The Germans, accustomed to opponents often acting separately, encountered a well-tuned system where Soviet pilots interacted with clockwork precision. Of course, the technology itself didn't guarantee victories, but in the hands of disciplined and experienced pilots, it became a weapon no worse than a cannon. Soviet aces understood that strength lay in teamwork and used the radio station not for simple chatter, but as a tool for tactical superiority. This allowed the Airacobra to shine even more. It not only struck accurately and powerfully, but also helped its pilots act as a unified force, breaking the Luftwaffe's familiar patterns. Thus, radio communication, which was commonplace in the West, turned out to be a real trump card on our front. It complemented the plane's survivability and firepower, transforming the Airacobra into a tool not only of individual skill, but also of collective victory. When discussing the Airacobra, it's impossible not to mention the names of those who turned it from an unusual American fighter into a legend of the Soviet sky. First and foremost, this is Alexander Ivanovich Pokryshkin, a man whose name became a symbol of an entire era. A three-time hero of the Soviet Union, he achieved 48 confirmed aerial victories on the Airacobra. His school of piloting and tactical innovations transformed the machine with a difficult character into a finely tuned hunting instrument. Pokryshkin didn't just fly, he built an entire combat system in which the Airacobra performed to its full potential. Alongside him fought his loyal comrade, Rechkalov, another outstanding ace. With his skill, he proved that success on the Airacobra was not an accident, but the result of the right approach. For him, This plane became the instrument with which he conquered the sky, step by step, battle by battle. Amit Khan Sultan, a two-time hero of the Soviet Union, a legend of the Crimean Tatars and all Soviet aviation, also holds a special place. His name is forever associated with fearless attacks and incredible bravery. On the Airacobra, he proved himself not only as a master of maneuver, but also as a man willing to go to the end for victory. These aces did more than just destroy dozens of enemy planes. They showed that even a machine with a controversial reputation could become a formidable weapon if piloted with intelligence and courage. In their hands, the Airacobra ceased to be a misunderstood American and turned into a true ally, inspiring fear in enemies and confidence in its own side. Every one of their victories cemented the Airacobra's reputation as a plane that found its place precisely in the Soviet Union. And thanks to people like Pokryshkin, Rechkalov, and Amit Khan Sultan, this machine entered history not as a temperamental fighter, but as a symbol of triumph and mastery. Despite all the fame of the Airacobra, we must not forget that victory was forged not only on Lend-Lease aircraft. Soviet aviation continued operations with its own machines, created in the harsh conditions of the war. Ivan Nikitovich Kozhedub, a man whose name is forever etched in history, is a vivid proof of this. He achieved his legendary victories not on the Airacobra, but on Soviet fighters like the La-5 and La-7. These planes were the product of domestic engineering, born directly out of frontline needs and a constant shortage of resources. Kozhedub became an example that it's not just about technology, but primarily about the person and their ability to unlock the machine's capabilities. His 3 Gold Star Hero of the Soviet Union awards are a reminder that Soviet aviation could stand against the enemy even without foreign supplies. This does not diminish the significance of the Airacobra, but emphasizes the balance. Victory was composed of a combination of factors: the experience of the pilots, the work of the engineers, the efforts of the mechanics, and the supplies from the Allies. Lend-Lease provided vital help: planes, fuel, materials, equipment. But it did not and could not replace our own aircraft industry, which continued to create machines suited specifically to our war conditions. The Airacobra became a symbol of a successful combination. Foreign technology and Soviet combat experience yielded stunning results. But alongside it in service were our Lay-GGs, Yaks, and Lavochkins, flown by aces like Kozhedub. Thus, the story of the Airacobra is only part of a bigger picture. It showed how Allied aid could become effective in the hands of Soviet pilots. But no less important is that victory was achieved through joint efforts. Allied supplies bolstered our aviation, and domestic machines, together with them, created the air power that ultimately broke the back of the Luftwaffe. The Airacobra's story became a striking example of how the same machine can have a completely different fate depending on who is at the controls. In America, it remained an aircraft with a bad reputation, too temperamental, too risky, too unlike conventional fighters. There, it was considered a failure, an experiment that didn't meet expectations. But on the Soviet front, everything turned out differently. Here, in the hands of pilots hardened in dozens of aerial battles, the Airacobra became the terror of German aviation. It revealed its strengths precisely in the conditions for which the Americans didn't value it. At low and medium altitudes, where the outcome of skirmishes was decided, Soviet aces turned it into a weapon to which they entrusted their lives and victories. This is the paradox. Technology alone does not guarantee success. What matters is who is flying it, what tasks they set, and in what environment they use it. The Airacobra clearly demonstrated that an aircraft is not just metal and an engine, but a tool in human hands. The same fighter can be useless in some conditions and indispensable in others. Thus, a dual destiny became fixed for it. In the West, a plane with the reputation of a problematic fighter. In the USSR, a symbol of bravery and mastery. The Airacobra proved that war is not only a competition of technologies, but also a test of people, their experience, courage, and ability to unlock the potential of even the most contradictory machines. And thanks to this, it remains forever in history as a fighter that managed to find its place and its role in the Great Battle.